So, we are moving on. The idea is quite simple. We couldn't have the proper records and informations about things, and we had an instrument to protect the data, but we can consider that the misuse of institutional prerogatives and the power of specific chairs to commit a crime is a problem. I mean, indeed, it's a problem. Then we will check that our house bound, which is a credit, and this credit is inside a paper as an instrument, and by this instrument I can have a negotiation and operate this paper, which has a causality on it, because if I didn't suffer an aggression, I wouldn't have the right to claim a compensation. If I suffered an aggression by the organized crime since 1988, they projected up to 2028, and consider now other area as defense, but on present time 2022, and all money diverted is 33 trillion from the public budget. Brazil, indeed, I got harmed as 33 trillion by the decreasement of capacity to have the responsiveness against corruption. This is the functional relation that allowed me to charge this credit, because this impacted my research inside my private living with interest on it. And by obvious, we are cycling this as a looping effect as a creditors that can operate this paper as the instrument, do the negotiation and the causality, which is something that goes after the first operation as factoring. But if we move this as factoring, and I didn't receive, indeed I'm the creditors of the creditors that charging you, and simple to understand that I'm at the top of this charge as compensation. You know, simple to get the point. And I'm here. And if this charge is 33 trillion, and to indeed have this 33 trillion, I must have and receive 1% of the first 3 trillion, you know. And indeed, let's suppose that I operated 6 billion as two transference for Europe and CIA and KGB. Indeed, they kind of have an expectation that has a continuity of the charge, and they now are maybe in solidarity with me, charging this group here, you know, that kind of have the interest and move the paper. And as guess what, this is a committee as creditors with levels as interest associated into the coverage of this paper. Simple to get. And the debtor as a systemic crime organization goes in area named budget, Brazil. And we can have this by nations because all nations may be inside the budget Brazil on global events, especially pandemic crime. But by specific chairs, I can have, for instance, the transference as 3 trillion, considering a department on Europe, which was the Mr. Jürgen Stock, the chief as Interpol in the last administration, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg, which is the current chair on NATO, but will assume a chair on the Norwegian Central Bank, I think. Mr. Drago Kos, which is the chair against corruption and bribery in global scale. They receive money to have the urbanism reviewed and the development on West by the Western culture, And we had a transference in another moment to the CIA, the KGB, considering a model that we have. Let's suppose that I have 3 billions here, I have 3 billions here, which is the Art Society. They kind of have the expectation as a consequence of my expectation as payment 1% of first 3 trillion, which is the flow of coverage as 33 trillion, considering the area that is the debtors individualized and donated by this budget, Brazil. And the 1%, I must have in mind that I have another situation here as other financial service, and it means we have 0.5 at the top. Can you get? Is this all okay? Simple to understand and get? And this general idea as creditors committee with levels as legitimacy to claim the coverage of the entire credit as 33 trillion, considering the area with the segmentation, isolation, and individualization by chairs, can't go, for instance, as a presentation by the causality inside this paper, which leads to industrial crimes and others, especially considering the root cause as corruption by blind association in a transcontinental level, in an area that has an integrated failure. But the Constitution at this area first says that the clause, I would say on Article 5, the clause number 22, says that the property, and the credit is a property, I would say, has protection. And the clause, I think that is 59, is about the corporate activity to present the reasons and have the criminal petition in case of corruption, in case of industrial crime and others. By this, we segmented the area as debtors, and the quality of these debtors indeed is the same quality as criminal system in different moments by the misusage of attributes inside institutions to have the continuity of crimes on budget, impacting the communication service and records, because you are unable to have the transparency by the Article 174, and we need the habeas data around Article 5, Item 72, to protect the data on public departments, points the credit, which indeed is a registry, in a serious threat. And by these threats, we all creditors are threatened in the same way. And having this entire thing as the instrumental causality to have the petition to a judicial power with no interest at the cause and not partiality have the judgment. But the judgment is objective in the same way by values as we could get on the board. And the last thing that we will have is that the failure on budget going by the area in the way we had as integrated failure, and the failure indeed having the association on economy will be presented by the notation as self-defense, which is simple to understand. My frequency, considering my national space 55 and the federative unit Brazil and the city Rio de Janeiro and then the city Saquarema goes like this, and this distribution will be presented as my national state. I have only one in Brazil, but one considering 197 as states around the globe. In Brazil, we have 27 federative units in the globe. I have no idea. I will keep only one up to 197. And we have more than 5,000 counties and cities in Rio de Janeiro, and then we will repeat this thing as 1 up to 197 nations, 1 up to 27 federative units in Brazil, and the distribution of values indeed are always presented the value as -1, which is the corruption. This is the segmentation as regression from Brazil to each city, considering each department in each one of those cities with signatures on budget. And this gives ourselves the frequency 55 criminal or corrupted. And this frequency indeed will be the frequency 55 with the sigma as limit, 197 nations declared in the explicit, 3 levels hidden, 98 as immigrants, 99 as transnational organized crime, and then we will have the 200, which is the limit of things. But the entire thing integrated as failures, which goes up to 199, indeed is minor than the 200, which is the committee to charge things. When we had the presentation, we said that we will launch something and will be something always legal. And if something wrong or illegal get close or associated with must have the protection. And indeed is the protection as credit legitimated by law as a compensation, and the creditors with interest and accreditation into the legitimacy of this paper to be covered. Simple to get. We will move ahead in the near future in the way we can, or if it's possible. Have a nice weekend and happy April Fool's Day.